Welcome to the LongCOVID MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Zeest Khan. Join us as I share my journey moving from being a full-time physician to a full-time patient with long COVID. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is a brief disclaimer that while I am a licensed physician, the contents of this podcast does not establish a patient-physician relationship, and nothing in this podcast replaces personalized medical advice from your medical professional. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of this podcast, LongCOVID MD. I'm your host, Dr. Zeest Khan. I'm a Stanford-trained, board-certified cardiothoracic anesthesiologist who has been taking care of critically ill patients for nearly 15 years. I contracted COVID-19 during patient care in 2020 and have been suffering with symptoms of long COVID ever since. My life has turned upside down, and this podcast is a way to share with you the steps I have taken to guide my recovery. I've used everything I know about medicine and how our medical system works to navigate this complicated disease. I'm not going to limit myself to sharing the treatments that have helped me or that did not work for me. What I'd like to do is explain the approach that I have taken to my recovery. It's been a very specific type of approach, guided in no small part by my experience as a physician. And I bet a lot of what I did will apply to you as well. So welcome. Let's get to know each other. Stay tuned for the continuation of the first episode of LongCOVID MD, the podcast. This journey has been marked with a lot of firsts for me, as I'm sure it has for you. One of the big things has been opening myself up and sharing my experience with others through social media, which has been such a tool for us, right? As we are restricted in our movements and our ability to congregate and collaborate. I want to take a moment to thank all and any of you who have shared your experience, your struggles, the things that have worked, the things that haven't with me on social media, because it has benefited me so much. It's made me more courageous in sharing my story. It has validated my experience and thereby empowered me. I really hope that this podcast is a contribution to this community and serves as a way of thanks. I also really hope that it actually is a collaboration. So please be in touch with me. My email is longcovidmd@gmail.com. Send me an email with questions you might want answered, with topics you think would be beneficial through type or even a voice memo. With that being said, let me introduce myself a little more. I'm Zeest Khan. I am a woman in my 40s. I live in a suburban/agricultural town in Northern California with my wonderful husband and 2 school-age children. We have 2 pets, actually 3 pets, 2 cats, one grumpy, the other sassy, and a small fish. We luckily are all pretty healthy, with myself as the exception. And I've invested a lot of my effort, not only recovering physically, but making sure that this unit remains healthy physically and emotionally. These are the most important people in my life and have been my biggest supports. Before I fell ill, I worked as a physician in a very high intensity field. I trained as an anesthesiologist and did my subspecialty cardiothoracic anesthesiology training at Stanford after going to medical school at Rush University in Chicago. A cardiothoracic anesthesiologist is first and foremost an anesthesiologist. That is the physician who takes care of you during surgery, makes sure you are safe and comfortable before, during, and after your surgery. We're the ones who put you to sleep and wake you up. I took my training a step further and did extra training in cardiothoracic surgery, which is surgeries that involve the heart and lungs and also some major blood vessels. These surgeries are particularly intense and have specifics that other surgeries may not. So these types of surgeries include open heart surgery after somebody has a heart attack or has problem with their heart valves, maybe has a murmur. It includes lung surgery, patients who have lung disease, vessels like aneurysms, and even heart and lung transplantations. We become experts in critical care medicine and tailoring our approach to patients with a lot more tools under our belt than we would just limiting our practice to general surgeries. That being said, I did not limit my practice to cardiothoracic anesthesia either. My practice was, but when I fell ill, in the town in which I live, in community practice. And not only did I take care of patients who were very, very ill, requiring heart and lung surgery, I also took care of patients getting a wide gamut of surgeries who are a lot healthier. So I was everywhere. If you were getting your appendix taken out, your gallbladder taken out, getting a new knee, or even having a baby, being on labor and delivery unit, I may have been involved in your care. In addition to taking care of patients getting scheduled and planned surgeries, I spent a lot of time in the ICU, helping to take care of patients who were very, very ill and might require emergency surgery. I also worked at trauma hospitals, taking care of patients with injuries that needed immediate assistance. My expertise was critically ill patients who were changing rapidly. It was really life or death situations, and that was what I was trained to take care of. I felt very privileged to be able to contribute to my community in this way and to take care of every single patient who I got to meet. I enjoyed my clinical practice tremendously, and I branched out and got more experience in how the medical system worked and the business of medicine worked. I started off in private practice and ultimately owned my own practice and was in solo practice before I fell ill. I had multiple leadership positions and contributed to several hospitals. I was also the division chief of an anesthesiology program in the area, and these positions were just as gratifying as my clinical practice because they made me better understand my patient demographic, made me better understand the resources that many different hospitals have and how hospitals utilize those resources. I worked with, in these leadership roles, worked with many medical administrators, some of whom had medical backgrounds, some of whom had MBAs and no medical experience. It really opened my eyes as to about how our medical system works. And that knowledge has benefited me while I have been ill also. As my clinical experience grew and I got older in age, quite frankly, I had many of my peers start coming to me and asking for advice on problems they faced in their careers and personally. Instead of giving direct advice, I thought it would be more interesting to help them decide what was right for them. And to do that, I pursued training as in coaching. So I'm a trained executive coach, and I've worked with professionals mostly in healthcare and tech. We sit and collaborate and set up goals, predict obstacles, and make plans to optimize their personal and professional lives. So it's been really gratifying as well, and a nice complement to my clinical career. The other part of my identity I want to share with you today is that of patient advocate or caregiver. Most of my life, I have been the doctor who comes into the patient room with answers and here to save the day. But since I've been very young, my family has experienced pretty serious illnesses, and I have been the plus one of a patient during emergency room visits and hospital stays on numerous occasions. One in particular was unfortunately terminal. And so I've been on both sides or three sides of the illness spectrum as a physician, as the patient in the bed, and as the family member sitting next to them worried. It gives me a lot of sympathy for our caregivers. Those of us who have long COVID need a lot of help, and it's a stressful position to be a responsible caregiver. They are our superheroes. They are our number one resource in many ways. And in this podcast series, I'm not going to ignore them. I want to discuss being an empowered patient advocate, and setting boundaries for yourself as well to maintain a healthy mental and physical state so that you can keep doing this wonderful, honorable work for us and get your loved one back to a healthy state. So, as you can tell from this little bio, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals and around illness. So when I fell ill, I leaned on all of these experiences to guide me in my recovery. Unfortunately, long COVID and virally mediated diseases like it are marked by uncertainty. We are uncertain about what our symptoms mean, what triggers them, what makes them better, and ultimately what treatment options will and will not work for us. We do this, sadly, in a worst case scenario, in a vacuum where everything is trial and error. It's not an efficient way to treat illness. And in some cases, it's a dangerous way because uncertainty itself is destabilizing. And when you compound uncertainty with an uncertain illness and uncertain methods of treatment, an uncertain approach to treatment, then you risk sacrificing a lot, not only your physical health, your mental well-being, and quite frankly, the infrastructure in which you exist, housing, income, personal relationships. So it's important that if we don't have clear guidelines from our medical community, that we find some guiding principles for our own treatment. In this podcast series, I will explain what my guiding principles have been. They've helped me tremendously and are based in my experience and expertise in medicine primarily, and a great deal in coaching. So I'll elaborate as we go, but I was able with these guiding principles to feel more confident in saying yes to certain treatments, no to certain strategies, and in addition, I felt more confident and empowered to recognize when treatments failed. So know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, right? I'll elaborate more as our podcast series goes. In fact, stay tuned for the next episode where I lay out these guiding principles and tell you a little bit more about my long COVID journey and how I fell ill, what my illness has looked like, and what my recovery has looked like. So stay tuned for episode number 2. But before that, thank you for listening to episode number 1. I'm going to try to keep these episodes brief if I can. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Please offer me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you, or keep listening to the next episode. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Number 1 in the bag. Thank you for listening to this episode of LongCOVID MD. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and found some of this information valuable. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you that your feedback and engagement means the world to me. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, I would love to hear from you. I am considering doing question and answer episodes throughout this podcast series, so send them over to me. You can reach out via email at longcovidmd@gmail.com. I genuinely appreciate your thoughts and ideas, so thank you in advance. Also, don't forget to stay connected with me on social media. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Dr_Zeest. That's DOCTOR_ZEEST. It's going to be the place to get updates on upcoming episodes, and hopefully we can continue some of the conversations that we start here. Your support and interaction is what is going to keep this podcast going, so I look forward to connecting with you. Until next time, I'm the LongCOVID MD, Dr. Zeest Khan. Bye for now.
stripe.